Welcome once again to our class. So we scheduled this class so that we can cover what we're supposed to cover, especially with regards to the fact that we have a new tax on the LMS. So we need to cover all this so that people can achieve that tax. All right. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this class. We'll just take a full rundown of what we've already discussed with regards to state management with Redux, and then we will just continue from there. So we established that Redux is a state management library. If once you stop hearing me, please comment. You can't hear anymore. Okay. So Redux is a state library, is a state management library for managing and centralizing application states. Okay, so just the way we use context to manage state, Redux is like a more reliable library utilized for managing states. We also established that Redux is for global states, right? So you're not just managing state in one component. You can manage the state across board with the whole application, right? We also established that before thinking about Redux, you should have a very large code base, right? So you are either building an application that you expect to become very large in terms of code base structure. In fact, in terms of in terms of everything, looking at it to be very large. So basically, when you have a small project, you don't necessarily need to utilize Redux to handle your store, except you're just doing it so that you can be like really acquainted to the use of Redux, right? But you look to using Redux when you have like a large application to build. For small applications that require global state management at a small scale, you can definitely use Context API to handle that. So I think I did drop the Redux toolkit installation, but I'm going to drop it again. Okay, so hold on, guys. Install that Redux slash toolkit React Redux. Okay, so I've dropped that link. I also dropped the link to the documentation where you can go and explore. So I will drop that again so that you guys can go ahead and explore the documentation. Okay. All right, so Udo is going to put anything that has to do with links and installation guide on the Discord channel for everyone to have access to. Okay. So let's go ahead and write. So I decided we should write from scratch again so that we can have another explanation, like have a good look at it once again, and possibly we would understand it better, especially for those who were in the last class, right? So for those who were not, feel free to check the class on YouTube, so that if maybe there are some things I might have said differently there that you might understand better. So yeah, go ahead and check that video. Okay, let's get right into it. So what we did initially was to install. After installation, we created a store directory where we created files for our Redux store and then a file for our slice. Okay. So I also explained what our slice is. And what our reducers are, right? So basically this store, what happens in this store is so let's liken Redux to a warehouse system, right? So let's assume you have a warehouse. For that warehouse, you have an inventory, right? So you have where you store things, and for those things that are storing, definitely you cannot just pack things and just heap them together in your warehouse. You won't be able to operationalization will be difficult, right? Because you want a situation where if you are looking for biscuits, you want to go straight to where you always stack up biscuits, right? If you're looking for phones, phone packs, or phone earbuds, you want to go straight to where they are. You don't want to start mixing up and checking inside everything before you can pick out one biscuit. Okay, so that warehouse, that inventory system is a system where you now have to catalog all your goods based on their types or based on their categories or whatever, right? Now, remember that for each catalog or for each group of products that you have in that store, as you keep removing, you want to replace so that you always have stock to sell, correct? Now, picture this as that kind of store, okay? Because what now happens here is that this store is like that warehouse. Now, the slice is like a particular product category or a particular product that you want to take, you want to track in your store. So you can have different products, you can have different slices for different purposes, right? For different products. So let's assume that you have one slice will represent biscuit cartons, then one slice would represent phones, right? In that kind of scenario, when creating your store now in Redux, you want to create two slices to handle one slice to track everything happening biscuits, and then one slice to track everything happening um, phones, right? So let's go ahead and see that in let's go ahead and see that working. So first thing we do is to import configure store. So if you notice, every time we want to utilize an external library, we always bring the configuration and then initialize that very tool that we want to use. So we want to create a store now, which is we want to create that warehouse. So we utilize the configure store tool that is already provided by Redux. Okay. We now go ahead and export that. Export const store, okay? And then we utilize this configure store to create that store. Okay, are we together? Now that we've created this store, we can now add our reducers. Okay, we can now add our reducers, which are those reducers that we are going to create inside our slice. Now let's reducers. So within this reducer now, we are going to add all our reducers inside here. Now let's go ahead and create one slice, okay? Now this slice is supposed to handle counting. So just the way we did when we were handling use state, we created a counter where we had the count and then we had the set count to update that count, okay? So we are doing the same thing here right now. We are only using a library now to handle it, okay? So let's import create slice. So create slice is also already provided by Redux. Okay. So now that we've imported create slice, we can go ahead and create our slice. So say const count slice is equals to create slice. And then within this slice now, we can now add everything, name the slice, define our initial state, and then we can create our reducer actions, okay? Now, let me explain what this slice is, okay? So basically what this slice holds is name. So you know that you need to name your slice, right? So let's name it counter. And then we have to set our initial states. Okay. Now for our initial state, we want to give it a value of 0. Right? A value of 0. All right. Now we want to add our reducer functions. Okay. So let's say reducers. And then we can now write our reducers within this object. And we want to increment. Our first action we want to do is increment, okay? So we want to increment. And for that, we want to say, check the state. The present state in store. And then for the state value, add 1 to it every time this increment is clicked. Okay? Then we go ahead and say, let's say, the quiz. And for this, we want to just set the opposite, right? We want to subtract when this is triggered. Please, I hope everyone is following. Then we want to also have a function that increments based on a particular value that has been added, right? Increment by amount. Okay. And for this, we are now checking state and action. And then we want to we want to add the value. So we want to check the state dot value. And then we want to add the action dot payload. So we want to add the payload to this initial value, okay? All right. So now we have created our actions, right? And this reducer, this slice rather, has automatically generated these 3 actions that we've created, as you can see. So increment, decrease, increment, and by amount. And you can see that increment by amount is expecting the payload. So we're pretty much good to go right now. So our next, what we'll do next is to export export our actions. Okay. Now, if we say export const and we want to bring our increment and then decrease, and then we want to also bring this action here. And now we are removing this action. Remember that these actions, we are removing them from our counter slice dot actions. Okay? Are we good? Are we following? Are we following, everyone? Nobody's responding. Can you all hear me? So are you following? Okay. All right, let's carry on. So we want to now export our reducer, okay? So let's say export default counter slice. Okay, so should be counter slice dot reducer. Okay, all right. So now we have we can now import we can now save this slice into our store, okay? So let's call it counter equals to counter reducer, and we now need to import, call it counter reducer from counter slice. Okay. So now we've imported our reducer and we've added it into our store. Okay. So now any value that is updated within this counter reducer, now we can get it anywhere in this application. The next step we'll do now is to go to our entry point in the application and add that store as a provider. Okay, so as you can see, I've added the store already as a provider. This provider is gotten from Redux directly. And then the store is the store we created. So we are providing this store to the whole application right now. Now, if we go ahead and let's utilize the dashboard screen to do this. So if we go ahead now and say we want to access those actions and the particular state of our counter or our count, the count state, we will go ahead and import So let's import the actions first. So we import increment. Import increment. Let's just take it from here. Okay. So the payload is the data you are passing to the function. So payload is like what you are sending, the information you are sending. Like when you were handling those forms in the last task, the payload is the content of your form data. That is payload. Okay. That is what you're passing into that API to make that call. Is that clear, Udo? All right, so we import it from our slice. From our slice, okay? All right, so now that we've imported these actions, we can now go ahead and import the tools that we will use to trigger these actions. Those tools are gotten directly from Redux, okay? So let's import use selector. So what use selector does is it use it to retrieve the content of your slice from the store. Okay. Then use dispatch. Use dispatch to trigger actions. Now, in order for us to retrieve our the content of our slice or the store, we to say const, let's call it count, because we are trying to utilize get the count, the present, in fact the initial, and then get other counts, right, based on the actions that we are going to be taking in the application, correct? All right, no, although I cannot. So let's say cons, we now say use selector, and inside this use selector, we want to access the state. Then inside the state, we want to access, remember that what we have in our store is counter. So we are trying to access that counter that we saved in our store. And we want to pick only the value from that counter, which is the value that we created, the initial value we created, right? So what happens here now is that for this, since we have accessed, you have used selector to access our global state, and then we have further gone to pick the particular slice or reducer, or you can call it reducer. So now we pick the particular reducer that contains the value that we want. Now, if we go ahead and console.log this, the log count, and save it, we should be able to see on the console that we have 0, which is the initial state that we set for this. Okay? So what we have done now is we have accessed this particular initial state that we set here. We have been able to extract it from our store using the use selector hook. Okay? Now, for us to trigger our actions, we require we'll need to utilize the use dispatch. So let's say const dispatch equals to use dispatch. Okay, so what we have just done now is we have, hold on here. All right, so what we have just done now, we have created a dispatch action, right? So for every time we want to utilize any of this action, implement any of this action, we will need to utilize, we will use this dispatch to dispatch that action because it is a Redux action. Okay, so you cannot use this dispatch to trigger any other action or any other function here, except that function is defined using Redux. Now, if we go ahead, let's go ahead and utilize our, so we have the results here and we have count. So this result would show 0 for now because the initial value that we set is 0. So we can now add a button and give it an on-click event, okay? For the on-click, we want to trigger the increment action, okay? So if we come down here and add the increment, hold on guys, so we bring our dispatch, and then we want to dispatch the increment action. Okay. So what we'll do now is we'll call that action inside this dispatch. So what happens now is whenever this button is clicked, it dispatches that very action of increment, as you can see. So it's not expecting any payload. The type of the action is increment. Are you following? So what happens now is when you trigger this, it does the function that was defined here, which is to add one value to the initial state. Now let's go ahead and close that button so that let's just give it a plus sign, okay? Now let's add another button for a dispatch of decrease, okay? And then we give it a minus sign. So if we save this and go to our code, we should have our plus sign and minus sign showing here. It's not looking so great because we're not done styling. But this class, I'm not sure the priority is styling now. It's for you to understand the usage of Redux, right? So what happens now is when I click on plus, it automatically adds one value. So what has happened now is that it has triggered this increment action that was defined in this store. Okay? So it has, once it triggers this action, the count increases. So we can keep adding count, and you can see that even our console is corresponding. And then we can also utilize the decrease to reduce the value. You see that it is adding even -1 to, is removing as you go, as you click, right? All right. Now let's add one more to handle the action, for increment by amount. So now remember that increment by amount is expecting a payload, right? Because when we defined it here, we added that we want to utilize the payload, right? From the actions, okay? So when we come here, we want to add a number, because what we want to do is add a number that has been define a number here to handle that calculation of adding any number that we put here should be added to the existing value of this initials of the state that is available now. So that will be a +2. Okay. So now for this plus now, if I click on it, let's name it add values, custom values. Okay. So for add custom value, if I click on it, every time I click on it, it adds 5 to the existing count. If I want to increase it, I can say add 67. And if I click on it, it should add 67 to the present value. Okay. All right. 67. Okay. So basically what we've done now is we've created our store, provided our store to the application here, and then we've also created our slides to contain all our actions. That is the actions that we want to take, and also the values, and also control the values. Okay. Are we together? Are we following, guys? Okay, so are we good? Why is no one answering? Can I continue, please? So why is it taking you time to say I should run through again? You don't understand something. You're right. I don't understand why everybody is cold today. Can we like pick up the vibe so that we can complete this class? We have like less than 40, we have less than 35 minutes. So do you want me to run this again from scratch? Is that the case? And how many other people? Okay. Who else needs me to do this, please? Joshua. Okay, no problem. Let's look at it. So we'll start from our store again. So remember the explanation I gave about the store. We are saving our categories. Okay, you know what? Let's do something else. Let me make you understand what it looks like to have different slices, right? So let's create another slice and call it team slice, not JS. Now for this team slice, we want to have a light team and a dark team, correct? So for this team slice now, let's say we now import create slice first. Import create slice. From Redux, and then we want to create that slice. using this. Now remember that once we create our slice, first thing you want to do is name your slice, okay? So let's say we name it theme, okay? And then we want to set our initial state. And we want to set the initial state to mode. Mode, and we want to call it, we want to give it light. Okay? Now we want to set up our reducers, okay? And for the reducer, we want to have just one action, which is to toggle our theme. Toggle theme, yeah. And then for this toggling, we want to check the state, and then we want to modify state.mode. So we want to update this state.mode anytime that this action is taken. So we say state.mode. If state.mode is equals to light, we should utilize the theme. We should utilize light, right? So let's have dark first. And then light. Okay. So now we just set the rule for this theme toggler, right? And we want to export this theme toggler. So let's export the action. So the action will be theme toggler, toggle theme equals to theme slice dot action. Okay. And then we want to export the reducer. Export default theme slice dot reducer. Okay, so now we've exported our theme slice dot reducer, and we've also exported our action. Okay. So if we come back to our store and import let's call it theme reducer from all right. So now we've imported our theme reducer, right? And we can just easily add it here. Call it theme and give it the value of theme reducer. So remember when I was talking about having different products? This is like having different reducers now saved in your store. Now you have counters saved in your store. It doesn't affect the theme. You're only saying, okay, now that I have saved my counter in the store, I want to also save my theme toggling logic and logic inside my store. Okay. So now what happens is you can now utilize this particular store in your application. Let's still utilize it inside our let's get it inside this dashboard code. So as you can see, we already did this for count, right? Now remember that they are all coming from the same slice, different slice, sorry, but the same store. So if I say const and say mode, use selector. So I want to access the state of this particular, I want to access the state of the team. So I'll check the general state. Then I want to pick out my team reducer from the store, right? And for that team reducer, remember that our initial value was saved as mode. So now if we check this initial value, we should be able to get light in our console. Now, if we go ahead and dispatch the action, so let's go ahead and dispatch the action for let's dispatch the action for so we need to import that action. All right, let's use a simple way of importation. So team slice, and we want to import our toggle team. So we come here and can replace this, then import it. So now we have our toggle team action imported from the Redux store for team, right? Now we can go ahead and, in fact, this automatically triggers it. So let's just name it. Let's say team. Team. Button, okay. Are you good? Now, so if we come here, every time I click on this team button, you see that it changes. It's now dark. If I click on it again, it changes back to light. So assuming you have like you want to handle styling now, right? You can utilize this mode to say for a particular, let's assume you are using let's assume you are using wait, I'm coming. Hello, excuse me, guys. Give me a minute. All right, hello everyone. Apologies. I had to attend to somebody. Let's go on. So remember that, okay, we're talking about using this mode now, right? To like conditionally do some styling, okay? So let's assume that you are trying to style your application now to utilize dark theme or light theme, right? So you can come here and say, uh, and say dollars. Okay. So you can use this mode, and then you can check that mode to say if this mode is equals to light, it's equals to light. So let this be string. Then you want to display dark. Sorry. You want it to be BG black. Or BG white. Okay. All right. So dark. All right. So as you can see, you see that what we have done now is we can now conditionally render different styles based on the theme that we want to display, right? And this theme, we are taking it directly from Redux. Okay. Now, what happens is that the same way we can use it here, we can actually use it in another component. So let's go ahead and use it inside. So let's use it inside this form. Let me still access that form. Forms. Okay, so we can access those forms. Let's look at overview. Can we access overview? Overview. Okay. So we can access overview. So let's put it inside here, okay? So if we come here and add this, now we've not actually called this, we've not called our mode from use selector. So let's take the mode and let's take it there. Okay. And then let's add our mode here. Use selector. All right. Let's also bring let's bring one action. Let's bring the action here too. So let's bring this team action here. Can you all hear me? Okay. So let's bring the team action to the overview component. Okay. So let's place this here, and then in fact we should just take the button alone. Let's take the button. Sorry, I'm copying and pasting so that we don't waste time, okay? All right, so I think for this, let's import it so that we don't have an error. Okay, all right. So now that we have this here, okay, if we go to our overview screen now, hold on, guys. Okay, the count is not defined. Hold on. Okay, this is the overview section. Okay, so if we haven't brought the count, why do we have count not defined here? Okay, because of these results. All right. So let's just remove these results. Okay. All right. Good. So you see the result is here inside this component. This component is inside the dashboard, remember. But we can actually handle our dispatch because there is an error because our dispatch is not also defined. Sorry, guys, we didn't bring in the dispatch. So let's bring in use dispatch. Okay. And then let's import use dispatch. All right. Okay. So we should be good now. So our dispatch is now imported. Okay. So everything should work well now. So if we click on theme button inside here, you see that it is not only changing the theme inside the overview component, it's changing it everywhere. Even where you have inside the dashboard where we already declared this result, right? It's changing it there too because we are not handling this within the component. We're handling this globally. So if I click here and change it to light theme, right, and I come to where I declared it inside the dashboard and click on it again, it changes. So that's what you need to understand about global state management, right? You want a situation where you can handle everything you want to handle in one place, then trigger all those actions anywhere in your application you want to trigger the actions in. Okay, so this particular theme toggling can be done from anywhere in our application, and it will give us the same results. Okay, so if we toggle it to that theme, it will always be that theme across board in the application because the application is maintaining one state. If we do the same and toggle it back to the white theme, same thing happens across board. Are we following? Do we understand? Do we understand? Respond, guys. I really don't know why you guys are so cold today. Are we good? Are we good? Okay, so everybody understands. Perfect. All right. So feel free to come back to this class and on YouTube and watch it, right? I think this very class is going to is like is holistic enough so that because I needed us to have this class because we could not complete the last class, right? Because of time. So go through this video as many times as you wish. I think I've explained this in like I did, I explained it twice. So I'm very confident that if there's any aspect of this thing that you don't understand right now, if you watch the video again, you will get a clearer understanding. Okay. I also dropped the documentation, so feel free to explore the documentation, read. So don't rely solely on what we learn in class. Okay. Then also get your hands dirty. The tax has dropped, and the expectation is that there's always a deadline. So get on with it and start doing something. This spare tax is a little bit complicated, and you require Redux to handle this tax. So jump on this video, get yourself acquainted to this concept, and then get your hands dirty. Okay? All right. Thank you everyone for joining. I know that it was a tough one bringing you guys this evening. We didn't plan this. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening. All right. Bye.